My name is Claire Bennett. I am 32 years old, and a month ago my mother stood in the center of her dining room, raised a crystal wine glass, and told 14 people that I would never be a real woman. She didn't shout it. That would have been easier to fight. She said it softly, almost fondly, like she was sharing a charming flaw about me. It's such a shame, she told the table. Claire has done very well for herself, but a career isn't the same as a family. A woman isn't complete without marriage and children. I guess she just never learned how to be a real woman. There was a small ripple of laughter. My Aunt Denise gave an awkward smile. My cousin Emily stared at her engagement ring. Someone cleared their throat. No one defended me. I was sitting at the far end of the table, a linen napkin folded precisely in my lap, the same hands that had held a human heart 3 days earlier, now gripping a fork like it was the only solid thing in the room. I remember noticing details. The way the chandelier light reflected in the wine, the faint smell of roasted rosemary chicken, the hum of the dishwasher in the kitchen. Trauma sharpens strange things. Before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you why that same woman called me 30 days later, her voice cracking, asking for help, let me tell you how we got here. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. The kind of place where lawns were trimmed every Saturday, and everyone knew when someone's marriage was unraveling before the couple admitted it themselves. My mother, Linda Bennett, was once the most admired woman in our church community. She married young. She baked from scratch. She wore soft cardigans and smiled with all her teeth. She believed in sacrifice the way some people believe in gravity. It was constant, unquestioned, inevitable. My father left when I was 12. There was no dramatic fight that night. No slammed doors. He just didn't come home. A week later, he called to say he had met someone who understood him better. My mother never dated again. She rebuilt her life around martyrdom. I gave up everything for you and your brother, she would say whenever we challenged her about anything. Everything. I believed her for years. When I was 17, I told her I wanted to be a doctor. We were sitting at the kitchen table. She was folding laundry. I had a college brochure spread open in front of me. Northwestern has an early admission program, I said, my voice trembling with excitement. If I get in, I could fast-track pre-med. She stopped folding. Doctor? She repeated slowly. Yes. She studied me, as if I'd announced I wanted to move to Mars. Doctors don't have families, Claire. That's not true. They choose their careers over their children. I don't even have children. You will, she said calmly. And when you do, you'll understand. Understand what? That ambition is betrayal? That dreams are selfish? That women who want more are dangerous? I didn't say those things out loud. I was still her daughter then. Still craving approval like oxygen. I got into Northwestern. I earned scholarships. I worked part-time tutoring high school students in chemistry and biology to cover what financial aid didn't. The day I left for Chicago, my mother hugged me tightly and whispered, "Don't forget what matters." I thought she meant kindness, integrity, family. I didn't realize she meant conformity. Medical school was a war disguised as education. 4 years of anatomy labs, sleepless nights, caffeine, imposter syndrome, and the constant pressure of knowing someone's life would one day depend on my decisions. I loved it. Not because it was glamorous. It wasn't. Because it mattered. I remember my first patient interaction vividly. A middle-aged man with congestive heart failure. He was terrified. His hands shook as he spoke. I held his wrist gently and explained the procedure in plain language. His breathing slowed. He looked at me and said, "Thank you for treating me like a person." I walked out of that room, knowing I had chosen the right path. When I told my mother about that moment, she responded, "Just don't let work become your whole identity." It wasn't praise. It was a warning. She didn't come to my white coat ceremony. She said she couldn't get time off from work at the bank. Later, my Aunt Denise let it slip that my mother had said, "I don't need to watch my daughter pretend to be something she's not." Pretend. The word lodged itself somewhere under my ribs. Residency nearly broke me. Cardiothoracic surgery isn't gentle. It demands precision, stamina, and emotional detachment that feels unnatural at first. I missed holidays. I slept in hospital call rooms. I learned to function on 3 hours of sleep and still make life-altering decisions. At 29, I became an attending surgeon at one of the top hospitals in Chicago. The day my name was installed on my office door, Drive. Claire Bennett, cardiothoracic surgery. I stood there longer than necessary. Not because I needed validation, but because I had earned every letter. When I called my mother to tell her, she said, "That's wonderful, honey." Then, after a pause, "Have you met anyone special lately?" That was the rhythm of our relationship. Achievement. Redirect. Subtle disappointment. 3 years ago, I ended a serious relationship with a man named Daniel. He was kind, intelligent, stable. He wanted children immediately. He had a timeline mapped out, like a business plan. "I'm 35, he told me one night. "I don't want to wait another 5 years." "I'm not saying never," I said. "I'm saying not now." He shook his head. "You always say not now. When will it be now?" I didn't have an answer. I just knew I didn't want to bring a child into the world because I felt pressured. When I told my mother we had broken up, she sighed dramatically over the phone. "You're running out of time, Claire. I'm not a carton of milk." "That's not funny." "I'm not trying to be funny. No man wants a woman who puts work first." I stared at the Chicago skyline outside my apartment window. "Then he's not the right man. You're going to wake up alone one day." The way she said it wasn't cruel. It was fearful, as if solitude were a disease. That dinner party, the one where she called me not a real woman, was supposed to celebrate my cousin Emily's engagement. Emily is 24. Sweet, gentle, already planning wedding centerpieces on Pinterest. She works part-time at a daycare and talks about babies like they're inevitable miracles waiting in line. My mother adores her. Halfway through dessert, someone asked me, "So, Claire, any wedding bells in your future?" I smiled politely. "Not at the moment." That's when my mother stood up. She clinked her fork against her glass and delivered her speech, the real woman speech. When the laughter faded, I set my fork down carefully. "I perform open-heart surgery," I said evenly. "Last week I operated for 9 hours straight and saved a father of 3. If that doesn't qualify me as a real woman, I'm not sure what does." Silence fell like a dropped curtain. My mother gave me that tight smile I knew too well. "Claire, sweetheart, no one is attacking you." It felt like it. "You're too sensitive." There it was. The pivot. I stood up. "I have an early flight. You just got here. I've heard enough." As I walked toward the hallway to grab my coat, she said loudly, "One day you'll regret choosing ambition over love." I stopped. I turned around. "No," I said quietly. "I'll regret choosing fear over myself." And I left. I didn't cry on the drive to the airport. I didn't cry on the plane. But something shifted. For years, I had been trying to prove that my life was still feminine enough to be acceptable, that I could save lives and still be soft, that I could be strong and still lovable. That night, I stopped negotiating my existence. I stopped calling first. I stopped sending weekly updates. I stopped trying to translate my world into something she could approve of. Instead, I poured myself into work. 2 weeks later, I performed one of the most complex surgeries of my career. A 46-year-old woman with an aortic dissection that should have killed her before she reached the hospital. 8 hours in the OR. When we closed her chest and stabilized her vitals, I stepped into the scrub room and leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Dr. Patel, my colleague, looked at me and said, "You were brilliant in there." I shrugged. "We were." "No," he said. "You were." It struck me then. I was respected here. Not tolerated. Not pitied. Not judged. Respected. 30 days after that dinner party, my phone buzzed in the middle of a pre-op briefing. "Mom." I almost ignored it. We hadn't spoken since that night, but something in my chest tightened. I stepped into the hallway and answered. "Claire." Her voice sounded wrong, thinner, stripped of performance. "What's wrong?" Silence. Then, a shaky inhale. "It's your brother." And in that instant, every boundary I had carefully constructed was tested. That's where everything changed. That's where she stopped talking about what makes a real woman and started needing the one she thought I wasn't. "It's your brother." The words didn't land gently. They dropped. "Ethan is 28. My little brother. Taller than me, louder than me, stubborn in ways that used to drive me crazy when we were teenagers, sharing a bathroom and a mother who weaponized guilt like it was currency." "What happened?" I asked. "He collapsed at work this morning," she said. Her breathing was uneven, like she was trying not to sob. "They said something about his heart. They're talking about emergency surgery." "Claire, I don't understand any of it." My hand was already pushing open the stairwell door so I could have privacy. "Where is he?" "Riverside Methodist. They're running tests. The doctor said there's a blockage. Something he was born with, maybe?" They keep using words I don't know. My mind shifted automatically into clinical mode. "Is he conscious?" He was. Then they took him somewhere. "They said they need to operate tomorrow." "Tomorrow? That's fast," she whispered. "That means it's serious, right?" "Yes," I said honestly. "It means they don't want to wait." Silence stretched between us. Then she said something I had never heard from her before. "I'm scared. Not frustrated. Not disappointed. Scared." "I'm going to pull his chart," I said. "Stay by your phone." I still had system access to several hospitals in Ohio from a fellowship year I'd completed before taking my current position in Chicago. Within minutes, I was staring at Ethan's scans on my tablet in the dim stairwell light. Severe left main coronary artery obstruction. Congenital anomaly. Rare for someone his age to deteriorate this quickly, but not unheard of. High risk. I exhaled slowly. I called the attending surgeon listed on the case. "Dr. Harris," I said when he answered. "This is Dr. Claire Bennett. I'm Ethan Bennett's sister." There was a brief pause. "The cardiothoracic surgeon in Chicago?" he asked. "Yes. I was wondering if you'd call." We spoke for 20 minutes. He walked me through their surgical plan. I asked questions. Not aggressively, not defensively, but precisely. There were adjustments I would make, slight changes in approach that could reduce intraoperative risk. He listened carefully. "That's a good catch," he admitted at one point. "We'll adjust for that." When I hung up, I leaned my head back against the stairwell wall. My brother's survival odds had just improved. Not because I was a daughter, not because I was a future mother, because I was exactly what she said I wasn't supposed to be. I called her back. "He needs surgery," I said. "But they're good. And I've spoken with the surgeon." "You did?" "Yes." "What did he say?" "That they're moving quickly because it's the safest option." "I'll fly in tonight." There was a small, fragile pause. "You're coming?" "Yes." Her voice cracked. "Thank you. Not we need you. Not this is your responsibility. Thank you." It felt unfamiliar. I booked the last direct flight to Columbus and informed my department head I'd be gone for several days. "You need to be there," Dr. Patel said without hesitation. "Family comes first." The irony of that sentence almost made me laugh. I landed close to midnight. The hospital waiting area smelled the same as every hospital waiting area: industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Fluorescent lights that made everyone look exhausted. My mother was sitting alone, shoulders rounded inward like she was trying to make herself smaller. When she saw me, she stood quickly. For a moment, she just stared, not at my clothes, not at my lack of wedding ring, at me. Then she stepped forward and hugged me. She hadn't hugged me like that in years. "He's in the cardiac ICU," she said against my shoulder. "Let's go." Ethan looked pale under the monitors and wires. But he was awake. "Hey, superstar," he croaked when he saw me. I forced a smile. "You couldn't just call me like a normal person?" He laughed weakly. "Had to make it dramatic." I moved to the foot of the bed, studying the monitors. "Stable, for now." "You scared Mom," I said. "She scares easy." "She doesn't," I corrected quietly. "She just doesn't show it." He followed my gaze toward the glass window, where she stood watching us. "Is it bad?" he asked. "It's serious," I said. "But fixable. You're not sugarcoating." "I never have." He nodded. "You'll talk to them, right? Make sure they don't mess anything up." "I already did." His expression shifted slightly. Relief. That night I barely slept. I met the surgical team in the morning before they wheeled Ethan into the OR. Dr. Harris reviewed the adjusted plan with me. It was solid. "You won't scrub in?" he asked quietly. "I shouldn't." "Conflict of interest." He nodded. "Fair enough." My mother gripped my hand as they rolled Ethan past us. "Please," she whispered to no one in particular. Surgery lasted nearly 7 hours. 7 hours of pacing, 7 hours of watching the OR doors like they were a verdict. My mother sat beside me, rosary beads wrapped around her fingers, even though she hadn't been to church regularly in years. At one point she looked at me and said, "How do you do this every day?" "What?" "Wait while someone you love is in there." I held her gaze. "You don't wait for someone you love every day. You operate." Her eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't do what you do." I didn't respond. When Dr. Harris finally stepped out and said, "He's stable. The procedure went well," my mother collapsed into me. "You saved him," she sobbed. "No," I said gently. "They did. But you knew what to tell them." I didn't argue. Later, when Ethan was settled in recovery, Dr. Harris pulled me aside. "Your suggestions made a difference," he said. "We avoided a complication." "Thank you for listening," I replied. He smiled faintly. Not listening would have been arrogant. I thought of my mother's voice at that dinner table. A real woman, as if competence erased femininity, as if strength negated softness. Back in the waiting area, my mother looked at me differently. Not with fear, not with criticism, with something closer to awe. "Everyone kept asking who you were," she said quietly. "Just his sister. I told them you're a heart surgeon in Chicago." She didn't minimize it. She didn't soften it. She didn't change the subject. For the first time in my life, she introduced me without apology. 2 days later, Ethan was awake and joking about hospital food. Megan, his pregnant wife, hugged me tightly. "I don't know what we would have done without you," she whispered. "Our baby still gets a dad. Our baby still gets a dad." The words landed somewhere deep. That night, my mother asked me to come back to the house. We sat at the same kitchen table where I once spread out that Northwestern brochure. The house felt older, quieter. "I owe you an apology," she said abruptly. I waited. "I said terrible things to you." "Yes," I said calmly. She winced slightly. I thought being a woman meant putting family first, no matter what. I thought if you didn't choose that path, you were rejecting something sacred." "And now?" She looked down at her hands. Now I see that if you hadn't chosen your path, Ethan might not be here. The room went still. This isn't about winning, I said. I didn't help to prove anything. I know. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. But I was wrong. Hearing those words felt strange. Not triumphant, not vindicating, just clarifying. You hurt me, I said quietly. For years, not just at that dinner. Tears slid down her face. I thought I was protecting you. From loneliness, from regret. You were protecting your own fears, I replied. She didn't argue. Silence filled the kitchen. You are a real woman, she said finally. Stronger than I ever was. I studied her face. For the first time, I saw not authority, not judgment, just a woman shaped by her own disappointments. I'm not stronger, I said. I just made different choices. She nodded slowly. Will you come home more often? I'll visit, I said carefully. But I won't defend my life anymore. She absorbed that. I understand. I wasn't sure she did. But I didn't need her to fully understand anymore. Something had shifted. Not because she apologized, but because I had stopped shrinking. When I flew back to Chicago 3 days later, she hugged me again at the airport. Thank you, Claire, she said. And this time, it didn't feel like she was thanking a daughter who failed her expectations. It felt like she was thanking a woman she finally saw. But the story wasn't finished. Because survival changes people. And what happened after Ethan came home from the hospital forced both of us to confront something deeper than pride. It forced us to confront who we were when the crisis was over. And whether respect can survive once fear fades. When a crisis ends, everyone expects gratitude to linger. They expect transformation to be permanent. They expect fear to turn into wisdom. But fear fades, and when it does, people often return to who they've always been. Ethan recovered faster than anyone expected. Within 3 months, he was back at work part-time. Within 6, he was holding his newborn daughter in his arms, crying like a man who had almost lost the chance. I flew back to Ohio the week Lily was born. The house was louder now. Diapers. Bottles. Soft cooing sounds that felt impossibly small compared to hospital monitors and surgical alarms. My mother hovered over Megan constantly. Sit down. Don't lift that. Let me do it. Megan smiled politely, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. That first evening, while Ethan slept upstairs and Megan showered, my mother stood beside the crib, watching Lily breathe. She's perfect, she whispered. Yes, I agreed. She makes everything worth it. There it was. The quiet return of the old belief. I didn't respond immediately. She makes their life richer, I said carefully. Not more valuable. My mother glanced at me. You still think that? I know that. She studied Lily's tiny face. I used to believe children were the only proof a woman existed in the right way. And now? She hesitated. Now I'm not sure. That was progress. But doubt is not the same as change. Over the next few days, I noticed small things. Relatives came to visit. Neighbors brought casseroles. Everyone praised Ethan's recovery, Megan's strength, the miracle of new life. When they introduced me, it was different now. This is Claire. She's the surgeon who helped save Ethan. There was admiration, respect, curiosity, but admiration can carry distance. At one point, Aunt Linda squeezed my arm and said, "It must be hard, being so successful and still not having, you know." I held her gaze. No, it's not hard. She blinked, clearly unsure how to continue. That night, after the house emptied, my mother sat across from me at the kitchen table again. I see the way people talk to you, she said quietly. And? They admire you. But they don't understand you. That's not new. She sighed. I spent years trying to make you smaller so people would understand you more easily. The honesty surprised me. Why? Because when people don't understand something, they judge it. And I didn't want you judged. I let that settle. You judged me. Her eyes filled. Yes. The word didn't come with excuses this time. It just sat there between us. I thought if you chose a path I understood, I could protect you. You can't protect someone by reshaping them. She nodded slowly. I know that now, but knowing is fragile. A week later, at Lily's small baptism ceremony, something shifted again. The church was modest. Wooden pews. Familiar hymns from my childhood. As we stood in the front row, the priest spoke about family, legacy, and the sacred role of motherhood. I felt my mother glance at me, not with accusation, with something closer to concern. Afterward, during the reception in the church hall, an older woman approached me. "Are you Ethan's sister?" she asked warmly. "Yes. He told everyone you're the reason he's alive. I just advised the team." She smiled knowingly. "And do you have children?" The question was gentle. Casual. "No," I said. "Time passes quickly," she replied, as if offering helpful wisdom. I smiled politely. When she walked away, my mother was watching me. "You handled that well," she said. "I've had practice." She hesitated. "I used to ask you that question in my own way." "Yes. And I won't anymore." I searched her face for signs of performance. There weren't any. That night, after everyone left, she asked me to stay one more day. We sat outside on the back porch, late summer air heavy with crickets and distant traffic. "I need to tell you something," she said. I waited. "When I was your age, I wanted to go to law school." The statement stunned me. "You never told me that." I didn't tell anyone. She looked out into the yard like she was watching a younger version of herself standing there. "My father said law was no place for a woman. Your father said it would delay marriage." I told myself they were right. "You gave it up." "Yes. For them? For approval," she corrected quietly. The pieces clicked into place. Her fear, her rigidity, her insistence that sacrifice defined femininity. "If I had seen you choose differently back then," she continued, "I might have resented you anyway, because you would have been living the life I was too afraid to fight for." There it was. Not control, not cruelty, projection. "You weren't afraid," I said softly. "You were conditioned." She gave a sad smile. "Does that make it better?" "It makes it understandable." Silence stretched between us. "I don't want Lily to grow up believing she has one correct shape," my mother said. "I don't want her to shrink before she even knows her size." "Then don't teach her to." She nodded. "I won't." The next morning, before I left for the airport, she walked me to my car. "Claire," I turned, "I'm proud of you." The words were simple, unadorned. No comparisons, no conditions. I believed her. Months passed. We spoke more regularly, not about marriage, not about children, about work, about books, about politics, about Lily learning to crawl. One evening, she called me unexpectedly. "I enrolled in a community college course," she said. "What course?" "Intro to Legal Studies." I smiled slowly. "That's amazing." "I'm not trying to become a lawyer," she rushed to clarify. I want to know what I once wanted." "That's enough," she exhaled, almost laughing. "You changed me." "No," I said. "You chose to change." There was a long pause. "Are you happy?" she asked. "Yes." Not defensive, not proving, just true. "I think that's what I was afraid of," she admitted. "That you would succeed and still be lonely." "I'm not lonely." And I wasn't. My life in Chicago was full. Colleagues who respected me, patients who trusted me, friends who understood that love doesn't always mean marriage and motherhood. It can mean purpose. It can mean presence. It can mean integrity. The last time I visited that year, Lily reached for my finger with her tiny hand. My mother watched us. "She's going to have options," she said. "Yes. And she'll know that being a woman isn't one narrow road." I met her eyes. She'll know, because she would see it. In me, in her mother. And now, unexpectedly, in her grandmother. The night before I flew back to Chicago again, my mother stood in the kitchen doorway as I packed.